Hey again, everyone. Patrick Fingston here. I write the Illinoize political newsletter, which you can read every day at theillinoize.com, ILLINYZE. We are back for another podcast. We're putting this out a day ahead of when we usually would. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon. We've been at the Republican National Convention a couple of days this week up in Milwaukee. I have some mostly content dedicated to the RNC and Illinoize place in that. Coming up today, we'll talk to Richard Porter. He's the Republican National Committeeman for Illinois, outgoing Republican National Committeeman for Illinois. He has been in that spot for, I think, 12 years, and he is about to step aside. He was a very big Ron DeSantis supporter in the primary and has now turned all the way back into a Trump supporter. So we'll get his thoughts and some justification from him on some of the places he's gone and been and where he's at and why and all of that stuff. Who, what, when, where, why, how, right? And we'll also talk to Tahman Bradley, our friend from WGN-TV. He's covering the convention in Milwaukee as well, and we'll get some thoughts from him on what he's seeing on the ground at the Pfizer Forum up at the RNC. We're not going to spend a ton of time today on the big Republican National Committee story. I mean, that's Trump, that's JD Vance, that's the national election, right? That's you can go a lot of places and find the conversation on that. Illinois, of course, has its 60 some delegates that are all mostly and have all definitely voted for Trump for that nomination in the convention hall. It's interesting because the traditional Republican National Committee delegation from the state of Illinois is kind of your traditional old boys club. You got a lot of state legislators, members of Congress. You've got fundraisers and activists and people who've been around the party for a long time, right? That's not what this group of Illinois delegates looks like. This is a completely new look for the Illinois Republican Party. It is grassroots, and this is the real meaning of grassroots. This isn't the people who are far right conservatives and mad at the party because they keep losing elections. It's people who are Trump supporters on the ground, aren't party officials, aren't state legislators, etc. That have really dominated the election for delegates. It's the Red Hat Club. It's a lot of people. You know, I've been around Republican politics for a long time, as most of you know. And I walked into that Republican breakfast on Monday, and there were a lot of faces that I didn't know, and that that shows you just how much the party has changed, and it's a real departure. I don't know what that means long term. I think the other question is, what does that mean for congressional races, state legislative races, local races around the state? Because these may be people who, whether they like it or not, they're now leaders in the party. They were elected national delegates. Are they going to work to help elect a member of Congress like Joe McGraw in the 17th, or are they focused on legislative races, or are they solely there for Trump? And that just shows the really tough position that Republicans are in this state, because Trump has such a hold on the grassroots, the infrastructure, the heart and soul of the Republican Party in this state. But that's so downstate based, right? It's a south of I-80 party in that sense. So for Republicans to make gains, they have to start winning suburban legislative seats, right? Or suburban congressional seats. And do they have the infrastructure now to do that? Do they have the support? Do they have the backing of those quote unquote grassroots to help start to make a change in a neighborhood? Are these Trump delegates, these new leaders in the party, are they going to go around and knock on doors for Jim Martyr in the 14th, or Jerry Evans in the 11th, or Jim Karras in the 10th, which probably isn't a competitive race anyway? It's hard to imagine that this Trump excitement, which you're seeing from Republicans, and they surely are excited. I mean, they feel like they're going to win. But that's on a national stage. That's not in the state of Illinois. Trump has lost Illinois twice by 1 million votes each time. So if you're a legislative leader, a Tony McCombie who we talked to this week, if you're a John Curran who really doesn't have any competitive races on the Senate side anyway, are you concerned that any party excitement just peters out after Trump? And that's got to be a real concern. And it's a tough spot for Republicans in this state to be in. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, clearly at the top of the ticket too, right? We know that. But there are a ton of unanswered questions as we go into the fall, as we focus on congressional and state races as well. So let's turn now to our conversation from Monday morning with Richard Porter, the outgoing Republican National Committee Committeeman for Illinois. We recorded this in Milwaukee. I had to run my own cameras, so they're not perfect. There's some blurriness and not perfect angles. It's an audio thing, right? So trust the sound more than the pictures, right? And blame me for that. And appreciate Richard taking some time with us Monday morning. All right, we're in Milwaukee. It's the first day of the Republican National Convention. We are, thanks to the Illinois Republican Party, they gave us one of their little breakout rooms to visit with Richard Porter, the outgoing Republican National Committeeman for the state of Illinois. Richard, I think we have to just start first with the shooting.
Yeah.
Saturday, as we record this Monday morning. Of course, no matter your political differences, thank God Donald Trump's okay.
I mean, it's amazing, alive. Isn't it? I mean, history.
It's an inch.
Less than that. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, this is the story of life, really. I mean, it's how the smallest differences can make such a major difference in the outcome of where we go in life. I mean, so it is amazing.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take away from any of the policy discussions, the personal discussions, anything like that still exists about the former president. And you were one of the first high-ranking Republicans in the state to break from him in 2024, for 2024. You were very, very much behind Ron DeSantis. You've kind of gotten on board the MAGA train though, 100%. Since then. So I mean, what changed?
Well, I was never really anti-Trump. I was more pro-change, pro-new generation. And I think we have a great generation of new leaders coming up. And so I'm all about empowering the young and bringing new people in. And, I thought that was the right time. And I was wrong. I mean, our electorate disagreed. They wanted to see the president run again. And so I'm with our team 100%. And look, I do think the president has some really unique gifts as a politician. He is able to connect with and speak to people in a way that we haven't seen really in maybe a generation. I mean, it was interesting. He spoke to the RNC the other day. It was just his voice. It's just his voice. It wasn't his image. And he has this charming little New York accent. And it made me think, interestingly enough, of John F. Kennedy and how interesting his accent was and how charming it was to people. And so it was ironic, really, that just 2 or 3 days before someone almost took his life, I found myself musing, listening to his voice and the little New York accent lilt that he had in it, thinking that really is part of his charm. So look, he connects with people. He's an amazing politician. He's an extraordinary leader. So I'm very comfortable supporting.
Listen, it's July 15th. There's a million years in politics to early November or to November.
Yeah.
He's winning. He was winning before the shooting. He was winning before the debate. He's probably winning by a little bit more after current President Biden's really terrible debate performance. That's of course all dependent on states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania specifically. But in our state, in Illinois, Donald Trump's lost the state by 1 million votes twice. That generally has negative implications down ballot. Does the
it depends on the part of the state. I think in those parts of the state outside of Cook County, or maybe even from suburban Cook out, it's going to drive turnout. People are excited about voting for Donald Trump, and people are not going to be excited about voting for Joe Biden. So interestingly, in those areas where we're not strong necessarily, or we have some change going on in the party, it won't help us. But in other areas of the state, it actually will help us. And a lot of the Democrats are still being elected from downstate areas in these very heavily gerrymandered districts. But with a heavy Republican turnout, it might actually help us.
But that's to say those districts are so well drawn for Democrats that are the Sharon Chungs of the world.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Is Donald Trump really going to drive enough turnout there?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, Bloomington Normal, what you have there into Peoria, that's almost a suburban sort of electorate there. And I've spent plenty of time in Bloomington. It's not your traditional downstate rural Iroquois County, like where I'm from, conservative electorate down.
Well, you were making a point, and I cut you off. So why don't you finish your point?
No. I was just going to say he's lost the state by 1 million votes twice. So obviously we know the suburbs are the huge problem, right? I mean, I think we can generally agree on that for Republicans. In your mind, is President Biden's weakness in polling nationally, and I don't think we've seen a lot of state numbers for him in Illinois yet, but do you feel like there's an opening for Republicans in this state with, again, the shooting is a different story and we don't know what the impact on that will be, but just President Biden's struggles, will that open the door for Republicans in Illinois?
Well, I think it does, because there's going to be a huge enthusiasm gap, right? I mean, it's going to be a situation where Trump voters are going to be excited and so motivated to go to the polls. And who's going to be excited about voting for Joe Biden if he's still on the ballot? I mean, my goodness. I mean, he shouldn't be on the ballot. So I think a lot of people who might otherwise vote for Joe Biden will decide to stay home. So I think that's going to really make a difference in a lot of districts in Illinois.
But there's still the baggage, right? I mean, convicted felon,
Well, but that's so ridiculous. I mean, that's such a backfire. That case is so preposterous. I mean, I used to be paid huge dollars to be a lawyer. And like literally, everything was wrong about that case. They didn't prove one element of that crime. I mean, it was a business records case premised on his personal checkbook. I mean, you go point after point. Like literally nothing was proven in that. That was literally a witch trial. And what's funny about the witch trials, the witch trials in the 1600s are one of the bases for things like the ability to confront your witness, the presumption of innocence. All sorts of reforms in the justice system came out of the unfairness of the witch trials. And that's what's so ironic. I mean, I think people don't remember that history. But the things that were wrong about the New York case were, in a very historical sense, similar to the types of unfairness that led to the reforms to make our justice systems better. So,
but he's a convicted felon nonetheless.
Yeah, but nobody believes that.
But there's still the
I mean, nobody. I mean, it's like the extremists believe it on the left, and everybody else thinks it's nonsense.
There's the documents case in Florida. There's the January 6th case. There's the Georgia case.
I know, but you go point by point. The documents case. Joe Biden had his documents in his garage, and they're not prosecuting him because he's a feeble old man, right? So I mean, I think point after point, this is just clearly an assault on democracy. What they've done, going after a political opponent. They're using the legal system. They've weaponized it to go after a political opponent. It's just wrong, and people fundamentally understand that. Look, Donald Trump is a guy who connects with people. He is not part of the establishment. He is so far from that. The establishment just, recoils with him. But that's what this is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be able to clean out Washington, bring new people in, bring new blood, new perspectives, and that's what he brings. So I think, I think all those things end up helping him because they showed the Democrats going to extraordinary lengths to stop the people from having their voice be heard.
It's interesting, too, in Illinois, you had this conventional wisdom that the presidential year is terrible for Republicans and the off year is going to be the good one for Republicans. Yeah. The last two cycles have kind of flipped, though. Even though Donald Trump lost Illinois badly in 2020, there were still legislative gains in 2020, better than expected. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of legislative gains for Republicans in 22, especially in the Senate, on the Senate side, not so much the House side. But why do you think that general consensus, that establishment wisdom, why do you think that's changed a little?
Well, yeah, it's the turnout. I mean, Donald Trump excites people. I mean, they're so motivated to vote for someone who's different, who's not like the other politicians. I mean, he's a unique human being. I mean, he's an extraordinary human being. Think about it. He has been a huge success in three entirely different fields, from real estate, then into the media business, and now in politics. I mean, sometimes you see people go from business to this or from but for three different extraordinary successes, he has a gift for connecting with people. He's a very smart guy, and people, demean him in so many ways that are ridiculous. And he's a pragmatic guy. That's ultimately what got him involved in politics. He just saw how inefficient government was. One of his first public service acts was rebuilding the ice rink in Central Park. And it was taking the government years to get something done. He got done in months. And again, that's just because he's a can-do sort of guy who just focuses on getting the job done. And it's so refreshing to people. There's so much BS, as you know, in government. And to have someone who comes in and kind of cuts through it in the way he does, and let's face it, the man is extraordinarily lucky. I mean, he has this kind of bravado. He takes things on, and he pulls it off. I mean, just even the symbolism of that bullet nicking him is kind of symbolic of his life in politics. I mean, they can't get him. He keeps coming, and he gets back up, and he's still swinging. So that really inspires people. So I think it's the drive out. It's how he drives the vote that makes this a different sort of election.
So Republicans have a new chair, Kathy Salvi, taking the reins on Friday. Party's still divided. There were lots of people.
I think it's actually getting a little better, honestly. I mean, I think it's getting a little bit better, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, but you had some of the quote-unquote grassroots, which are really just far-right people who want to complain about something, it seems.
Well, one of the things I say always is the difference between grassroots and establishments, about 3 years. Because a lot of people who are angry grassroots people are new to politics. And they just think everybody that came before them must have been holding back the party, that they were actually sort of subversive agents for the Democrats that were purposefully, causing the Republicans to lose. Because in so many parts of the state, everybody's Republican. And so you look around and say, how is it Republicans aren't in control? And so I think it's a matter of being involved, seeing the dynamics, understanding gerrymandering, understanding the role of money in politics, our disadvantages in that regard. I think as people become more acclimated to these issues, it makes a difference in their involvement.
What's your advice for Kathy Salvi?
Be open. Be open and talk to everybody. The people that call you, that write nasty things about you on Facebook, call them up and say, let's go get a cup of coffee. Abraham Lincoln used to say, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. I think that's a great governing ethic for someone in this Republican Party, because there are so many new people in the party and there are so many different perspectives. You need to talk to everybody and demonstrate an openness to different points of view.
I think anyone that knows Kathy knows that she's a wonderful lady, objectively wonderful lady.
Yeah, and her family they have such a great family.
I think the question is, though, she's not a seasoned political operative. She's run for office a couple of times, not successful either time. Is she the right person in your mind?
I think she's a great person. I mean, I think there are several people running. They all bring different skill sets. And you hire the political operatives. I mean, you want to have someone that can speak to the concerns of Republicans and connect with people. So hopefully she'll bring that skill and that warmth and just bring the temperature down, bring people together, and help us engage as a team. Because once we're a unified team, we're not that far behind. We're dealing with a gerrymander, but as far as Illinois, it's only slightly, it's actually slightly center right. And it's only slightly, in terms of how we vote, as in the aggregate, leans to the left. Their best year ever is going to be 54.5% as the Democrats. California and New York are in the 60s. So we're closer to turning red than Texas is turning blue.
I've argued to people that the state looks more like Mark Kirk than Brandon Johnson. But
absolutely, good point.
One of the big things holding Republicans back, though, is fundraising. Mm-hmm. The Democrats have, of course, J.B. Pritzker's money, which is a huge help. Illinois Republicans had Bruce Rauner's money a few years ago, too. So it's not like that's exclusive. Union money, of course, plays a huge role in Democratic election machines. Business isn't there for Republicans right now. And essentially that's the door, right? If it's going to be unions for Democrats, it needs to be business for Republicans. Why isn't business getting on board with the GOP agenda?
Well, I mean, when you have a self-funder, it's like the best of times and the worst of times. You get the money coming in, but the rest of the fundraising and network atrophies because people say, well, he can handle it. Let Patrick handle it. I mean, he's got all the money, right? So
I wish.
Yeah. So, and that's what happened with Rauner. That's what happened with Ken Griffin. So a lot of people said, I don't have to get on the field. I don't have to give. Ken Griffin's going to give $1 gazillion. Now, one of the things that the Democrats have a built-in advantage is they have these institutional funders whose business is government, like the government unions, like trial lawyers. So they'll always have sort of an institutional base for their fundraising, where people, they absolutely need government to keep on going with what they do. So they're paying, it's part of it, pay as you go, basically, pay to get what you're asking for. On the business side, for the freedom-loving Illinoisans, you have to pay to keep your freedom. And that's sort of, it's harder to get people to do that on a regular basis. They're always going to want someone else to do it. It's the free rider problem, what an economist calls it. They want someone else to pay for it. They want their freedoms. They want the government to be less intrusive. They want their schools to teach their kids normal stuff. But nobody wants to go into their wallet and make the dollars, put the dollars on the table to make it happen. But we need to do that. Collectively, we're stronger than the Democrats. We just need to motivate people to pull together and make it happen.
All right, last question for you. You're stepping off the RNC.
Mm-hmm.
You recently retired in your legal career. We are 2 years and 4 months away from the 2026 general election. Your name has come up more than once for governor in certain circles. Are you interested? Is it something you want to do? Is it something you would aspire to do? Where do you stand on a statewide run in 26?
Well, it's something I've always been interested in government. I love people. I love being involved. I'm a big believer in freedom. I think that we're not pragmatic the way we need to be, and I think that we've kind of lost ourselves. That Illinois is focused on the wrong problems. But I'm also a pragmatist. I mean, as a pragmatist, I want to see a path where people see and they say they're looking for someone like me. I want to be able to run and win. I don't want to run and just put a sign on the wall and say I did it someday. That's not what it's about. So I want to see the opportunity, see how things are set up. I have an interest perhaps in working with the Trump administration if he wins. God bless us. I mean, I hope he does. So we'll see. But I do think that taking on the challenge of making Illinois a fabulous state again would be really a remarkable challenge and could be really exciting to do. But we'll see.
Thanks to Richard Porter, the National Committeeman for Illinois on the RNC. He also had a little tiff this week with Matt Gaetz, the controversial Florida congressman. Gaetz was kind of heckling former Speaker Kevin McCarthy as McCarthy did some TV interviews. Gaetz and McCarthy have this ongoing feud from when Gaetz helped drop McCarthy as Speaker. Porter is a McCarthy friend and supporter, and McCarthy and Gaetz kind of got into it with more than a few F words, so we're not going to play it here on the convention floor, but it got sent around on social media. If you really want to see it, go check out our Twitter page. We've got those videos up there. But Richard Porter definitely standing up for his boy Kevin McCarthy in that instance. Let's turn now to Tahman Bradley, our friend from WGN-TV, covering the RNC. So if you look in the background, Tahman Bradley's got a pretty good view of the Republican National Convention. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon, so J.D. Vance hasn't spoken yet. Of course, President Trump hasn't spoken yet. But Tahman and I have both been with the Illinois delegation a little bit this week. And Tahman, first of all, thanks for taking time. What's your take on how our Illinois representatives at the RNC, how they're approaching this convention? Because it seems a little bit different than we've seen in the past.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's huge enthusiasm, Patrick. And first of all, thank you for having me. It's always great to attend these conventions. I know you were here for a time. It's wonderful just to celebrate democracy and see really the diehards of politics, both the delegates and also the journalists. You see all the national correspondents who cover this. We all love politics. That's what we have in common, every single person who's here at the RNC. But this is a party that, whether it was that awful assassination attempt of the former president, or it's the polling, or Joe Biden's horrific, his terrible debate performance, Republicans feel really good about their chances in November. So that's what's driving the excitement. There are a few people who think that they're going to lose. They're looking at the battleground state polling. They're looking at the national polling. They're looking at frankly, the way that former President Trump has been disciplined in waging this campaign and how he's been on message. And so they think that the cards stack in their favor. And so they're excited. Now, if we're talking about local Illinois GOP issues, that's a different conversation, Patrick. But from a national standpoint, this is a party that is rearing to go and ready to try to win back the White House.
It seems like, and yeah, you're right. There's totally a difference in state issues and how they're approaching the presidential race. But I think it's important to note that this isn't your typical Illinois Republican crowd, right? I mean, this isn't your room filled with state legislators and donors. This is like, I mean, this is the red hat, people who are on the ground for Trump. That, I mean, listen, I've been around Republican politics in the state for a long time, and you walk into those breakfasts, and I've been to a couple this week. A lot of faces I don't know, and it shows just how much the party, and I'm sure Illinois is not alone. I mean, it just shows how much the party structure has changed in just a few years.
Absolutely agree with that. We don't see Jim Durkin or Jim Edgar here. Instead, we see downstate Republicans. We see the grassroots. We see organizers. Darren Bailey is sitting right in the middle, and there are more people like him than Bill Brady, right, who are here. In fact, I don't think I've seen Bill Brady here.
No, I don't think Bill Brady's there.
That's right. So those folks, they skipped this. It's the MAGA wing. It is the ultra conservatives who are driving everything. And of course, as you know, Patrick, that doesn't necessarily sell across Illinois. It certainly doesn't sell statewide because Republicans haven't won a statewide race since 2014. But so the people who are here, they believe that, they can find more of them in the state. But the reality is, the collar counties and the suburbs, Republicans are still pretty moderate, and there's just not room for them. Someone like an Adam Kinzinger, there's not space for them to be able to be here.
I wonder, and if the Mary Millers of the world and folks who read our newsletter and listen to this podcast know I have a history with Mary Miller specifically in an electoral sense. But she really turned on the Trump rhetoric this week with the media's trying to demonize him and the reason suburbanites aren't voting for Republicans is because the media hates Trump and stuff like that. And it's clearly BS, right? I mean, it's their own rhetoric. It's their own talking points. It's their own scatterbrained, Trump-centric policies that have put them in this position. It's not how you guys report things. So I think we need to first clear that up. Second, though,
right,
where Mary Miller lives I guess she moved to Douglas County, and where people are voting in the collar counties are not thinking the same things on issues. How do you think, or how do you see when you guys are airing the Mary Miller clips and the Darren Bailey clips and these people with a little bit of a drawl, that are trying to sell the Republican brand in Chicago and the suburbs, how hard is that to connect to these voters in the city and suburbs that they have to be relevant statewide?
It's really hard. My guess is the next Republican governor will be, a traditional sounding Republican governor, someone like a George Ryan, someone like a Jim Edgar. It's just hard to imagine a Darren Bailey working, right? Like, so folksy, simple messaging. He's a person, Patrick, I think would have played in just about any other state I shouldn't say that. He would have certainly played in all the red states or in the South here, but it just doesn't work in Illinois, again, because of all of the moderates, because there are Republicans who basically vote in Democratic primaries because they sort of realize there's not room for them, or that their vote won't make a difference. And so it's just where the national party is, where Trumpism is taking the GOP and the country, just does not match where Illinois is. So it continues to be difficult for Republicans. And you see it in the fundraising. Kathy Salvi, the new GOP chair, she's already said the candidates are going to be mad at me. I got scarce resources to hand out. Ken Griffin bailed. Bruce Rauner bailed. Those mega donors are just not contributing the money the way that they used to. And so it's just until Donald Trump is done, be it he's reelected and serves 4 more years, or he's defeated and the party rethinks MAGA and Trumpism. It's just going to continue to be tough for Illinois Republicans to win elections. They're going to continue to likely have these super minorities in the legislature.
You mentioned Kathy Salvi, the new chair of the Republican Party, effective on Friday. She met the media Wednesday as we record this in Milwaukee, and it was an interesting discussion. You know, she's very positive, and I personally like her very much.
She's likable, yeah.
And she's not even on the job yet, so it's hard to have a detailed plan for how you're going to turn around this flaming dumpster fire that has been Republican Party politics in Illinois for almost a decade now. But it is clear that the division inside the GOP isn't going away. Do you believe that they have a plan to turn this around, or is this just going to be more rudderless boat floating through Lake Michigan?
I've not heard the specifics of the plan. She would say that people got together here at the RNC and had breakfast and shared coffee. The problem is, as we touched on, it's all conservatives, it's all the hardcore believers. No, I've not seen a plan. It's just going to be difficult. I mean, I guess best case scenario with Democrats, Joe Biden problem, if independents break for Republicans, that potentially could help. And then in another 2 years, Democrats continue to have their struggles. I mean, that's sort of that's the best case scenario right now, but it's a difficult situation. The moderates are gone. They're not stepping up to run for office. They feel like they can't win. You can combine that with all the money J.B. Pritzker has spent in defeating Republicans and even playing all over the state and not just counting on Chicago and the suburbs. It's just going to really be difficult for Republicans here probably over the next decade.
Tahman, before we let you go, let's turn our attention to Chicago in about a month, where Democrats will be doing the same thing at the United Center. Joe Biden is supposed to be the nominee. It still says he's going to be the nominee. There's a new AP analysis that shows a majority of Democratic delegates want Joe Biden to step aside. You've had 3 members of the congressional delegation say the president should step aside. Senator Durbin has all but said that. As you've talked to Democrats in the state, how concerned are they about President Biden's viability in November?
Privately, they're panicked. Obviously not everyone is saying that. It's notable that the Congressional Black Caucus continues to have his back, and he certainly has his defenders on cable news. And I think most Democrats will tell you he's been better, maybe not good enough, but better post-debate as he's been out on the campaign trail and has been doing interviews. He wanted to ram through his nomination perhaps as soon as early next week, but that was put on hold. The reporting is Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer said, we'll get you on that. We'll make sure that that everything is approved so that you make the ballot in Ohio, which has to happen by mid-August before the
and Ohio changed their law too, so it's not as pressing as it was before.
That's right, but there's only a couple of weeks left. The party position continues to be that he's the one who has to make the decision, that he's not running, and he's not there yet. That's not what he's saying. And there's been no indication he's going to budge. I think it was a little bit of a slip. He did an interview with BET last night where he said, it's been difficult, kind of deciding that I'm not the guy, but I wouldn't read much into that. It's
hard to read anything into all the gaffes lately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really difficult.
As we speak today, he's the nominee. He wants to do this. He thinks he's the person who can beat Donald Trump. But Patrick, Democrats are going to have to get united and kind of do what Republicans have done, and sort of hold your nose and just accept it and follow the party line. And they need to do that coming out of this convention. You don't want another week of stories about he needs to step aside. That would not be good for a party that is trailing in the polls. It needs to make up ground.
Where does Governor Pritzker fit into all of this? I mean, obviously his name is brought up in some circles as somebody that could replace the president on a national ballot. one, because he has the personal funds to write a check and stand up a
Yep.
campaign tomorrow, which
Yep.
only Kamala Harris has the ability to do with
Right.
the FEC rules of taking over the
Right.
Biden campaign infrastructure. But he's also a player, right? He's a governor of a big state. He's got a lot of money. He has an influential name. He has publicly said he's all in for Joe Biden. There was
Correct.
some hot mic stuff that said obviously he's concerned. Duh, every Democrat is concerned.
Right.
Privately, though, from what you've heard, is he really raising alarm bells here?
So I think he'd love to do it, but obviously he's in a difficult spot because the convention is in Chicago. It's in his state. He's been such a strong supporter. He's totally angling for 2028. So it's just really difficult. If Democrats are to go down, I mean, you just can't. You can't butt heads with your sitting incumbent president, and if you want to have any favor in the party going forward. So a little bit of a tight spot. The public posture has been he supports Joe Biden, even as he sort of angles and gets attention and does the CNN hits. And 2028, Patrick, is definitely underway. I mean, you see the campaigns and some of the sourcing. It was leaked that Gretchen Whitmer had expressed concern that Biden wouldn't be able to carry Michigan, and there was intrigue about who leaked that. Did that come from Gavin Newsom's political operation? Did it come from J.B. Pritzker's political operation? And so they're all waiting to see what Biden does. But and certainly if it's Kamala Harris, they're going to question whether or not it should just be given to her, which might be the natural order of things. So they all are just going to have to be patient, I think, here, because it's either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, likely.
Mm-hmm. Tahman Bradley from WGN-TV from the Republican National Convention. Tahman, thanks so much for fitting us in. I appreciate it. And thanks for all you do and all your help along the way.
Of course, Patrick. Take care.
Not a bad view for our friends with the TV cameras, that's for sure. Thanks to Tahman Bradley, our friend from WGN, for taking a few minutes to talk about the RNC and, of course, the Democratic National Committee and Convention that comes to Chicago next month. We'll of course be covering state-centric events as it relates to the DNC in Chicago as well. And thanks to Richard Porter for his time. I appreciate a conversation with him and his thoughts on issues national and state as well. So good conversation with him. Thanks to you as well for joining us. Thanks for taking time and to listening to this podcast whenever we put it out. It's always great to hear good feedback and what folks are like and don't like, and a lot of times what they don't like is me, and that's fine. That's what we deal with. So thanks so much for taking time to join us. We'll talk to you again next time here on the Illinoize.